Welcome to the Story Tinker podcast, a place for in-depth analysis of stories, mainly from Webtoon. Co-hosted by sharp, witty, and dare I say, thirsty fans, we dive deep in every episode, analyzing character struggles, relationship development, and of course, theories. We also interview people working in creative industries. You can follow the Story Tinker on YouTube, podcast platforms, and social media. For bonus content, sneak peeks, and more, you can support the Story Tinker on Patreon. We're really appreciative of your likes, subscribes, follows, comments, and ratings on all platforms. Thanks for listening to the Story Tinker, and let's get started.
Here we go. Hi everyone, and welcome to the very first time that we are doing The Witcher on the Story Tinker. So usually we do Webtoon stories, and this time we're doing The Witcher. So I actually want to talk a little bit about how I got to The Witcher, because if you would have asked anybody, would Mindy be watching an extremely violent and gory show? The answer would have been no. So how did I even get to it? It's actually through Webtoons, surprisingly enough. So Let's Play, which is one of the stories that we podcast on, was optioned to be a TV show. And I was reading the news about it, and it said that it was optioned by the same people that from Hive Mind Productions, who also produced The Witcher. And I was like, oh, I would love to, work on this TV show. So let me get to know the people and, see if I can network. So I looked up the people who did Hive Mind, and I saw they did The Witcher. So I was like, okay. And I listened to interviews with the showrunner, 𝘸𝘵𝘂𝘁𝗵. And I was like, wow, this, she was talking about The Witcher. And I was like, it sounds so interesting, because I always love hearing how stuff is produced and like the thought process behind it. And then I was like, wow, I really want to watch The Witcher. And I was like, I don't know, I heard it's really violent. I don't know if I like it, but you know what? I bet my husband watched it, which he did. And I was like, hey, I want to check out The Witcher. And, season 2 is coming soon. So he's like, yeah, I wanted to rewatch season 1. So let's do it together. He's like, you're not going to last 10 minutes. And I was like, so give it a try, because basically I don't even watch anything these days. I only watch rom-coms maybe, and like once a month. Like I barely watch. So turns out I was not only able to watch The Witcher, but I really, really, really loved it. And I did have to have violence. Like anytime there's gore, I just like put my hand in front of the screen. But, like I've just been obsessed ever since. So here we are.
I am Sadie, and I create Celestis on Webtoon. And I got into The Witcher because my brother-in-law is a massive nerd. And he said, oh, have you read them? And lent me the first book. So I read that. And then I've had a few people tell me that I would really like the video games. I just haven't really had time to play through them. Too busy playing Final Fantasy. But I really love the graphic novels. The graphic novels are absolutely fantastic. And I will consume almost any graphic novel going. But these ones were really, really good. So if you do like them, you should definitely read them. They're great. When I found out that they were doing a TV series of The Witcher and that it was going to be Henry Cavill, I was like, because I do not like him as Superman at all. I don't really like Superman, full stop. But I was pleasantly surprised. I was very wrong. I was so wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it.
Awesome.
Alrighty. Well, I am Veronica. I got into The Witcher. I saw it as a commercial somewhere. I don't even know where I saw it or how I saw it, but something popped up about it, and I was like, Henry Cavill can play grunge. Let's see how grungy and dirty this guy can get, because he's always so clean and smiley. I don't even know how this can work. And so, and the concept of it sounded really cool. But I mean, prior to that, I actually never really heard of it. I didn't read any of the graphic novels. I don't play games of really any kind. So like, I don't have a game console. I don't play computer games. I'm not a gamer in any capacity. So Scott and I were like, let's just get into this. It seems like our kind of thing. It's dark, it's gritty, it's fantasy. Like, all right, So, and then it was just a very pleasant surprise. And I really, really enjoyed it. And then, yeah, that's just how it happened.
Yeah. So, yeah. I'm just going to give it also a little funny story. So I found this, I started watching The Witcher maybe a month ago, like a few weeks before it was supposed to come out. So Yoel and I watched it on like a week, season 1. And then I wanted to prepare for the podcast because I knew we were going to podcast on it. So I reviewed season 1 while on the gym at the elliptical. Like I was there for like hours, just like watching it on 1.5 speed, rewatching it. And then Yoel and I watched season 2, properly, like in bed and, at proper, giving it full attention. And then I rewatched them all again in like a week, again, also on the elliptical. So I was like at the gym, and every time there was like a sex scene or something inappropriate, I just like shoved it in my chest, like no one would see.
The sex scenes are terribly graphic.
Yeah, the first season.
I think I've seen more graphic sex scenes before on other shows, where it's practically like softcore porn. I'm just like, this is really a little awkward to watch this softcore porn I wasn't expecting.
So just a little note about how we're going to do this. We're going to do episode by episode, and we'll try, for the audience, we'll try not to spoil anything from the next episode. We'll keep it self-contained so that if you haven't read, watched beyond this episode, you're not going to get spoiled. And we're also not going to talk about like spoilers from the books in general. We haven't, except for like Sadie who has read the first book. We haven't read the book, so we don't know. And I'm going to keep it that way because I don't want to compare the two. I know some people are like upset about some differences, and I kind of like the fact that I don't have anything to compare it to, so it's a clean slate. So with that said, we're going to start with episode 1. Episode 1 is called A Grain of Truth. And we're going to follow people, the episode obviously jumps around. We're just going to go follow people directly, like, so that it's more clear. And we're actually going to leave Ciri and Geralt, that story, for last. We're going to start off with the other characters first. So here we go.
So Yennefer and Fringilla?
Yeah, well, we're going to start with 𝘬𝗪 and Aretuza, where we have, this is the aftermath of the War of 𝘬𝗪, and Tissaia is looking for Yennefer. She is doing something very interesting. She's kind of like putting her hand on every dead soldier and seeing their last few moments, and she's trying to see, is Yennefer there? But of course, 𝘨𝘂𝘁 tells her there's like 20,000 dead Nilfgaardians and like, 5,000 dead 𝘕𝑰𝘰𝑗𝑚𝑒rians and this many dead, whatever, something else. And he's like, you're not going to find her. So, she is totally distraught. She calls Yennefer. And at the same time, Geralt is also looking for Yennefer. He's also come there with Ciri, and he's also screaming Yennefer. So it's like this nice parallelism, and they meet. So it's for the first time, like those two worlds are colliding. And Tissaia basically tells him like she did an amazing job. She saved us all, and she kind of implies that she's dead. Which I don't know about you guys. I was a little like, I was like, just tell him she's missing. Like, just, don't like lead him to believe she's really dead.
Yeah. That when it's left so open-ended like that, the person's not dead. It's like, it's impossible when you know that they're also a very big main character, but it's more like just what happened to her. In my mind, I thought that she kind of like faded, but wasn't dead, but like faded, because I know that if you released all the chaos, it has to take something from you as to balance it out. So I thought like her physical form went elsewhere. Like, I don't know where, but I thought that's what happened. And that's why they couldn't find her, like, in the area, and they couldn't sense her, because I really thought that she just physically disappeared. But just her soul still existed somewhere. Its essence was floating around.
Did you find it quite odd how Tissaia was so upset about Yennefer being missing? Because I got kind of these huge, like, they tolerate each other vibes. Like, they tolerate being around each other. for the purposes that they have to be around each other. And her being like, you know, oh my God, I'm devastated, and, you know, I'm going to walk around crying and screaming her name. I was like, what?
Yeah, what confused me was because she was the one that told her to release her chaos. So it's like, did you not think that something would happen to her as a result of that? Knowing that magic has to balance itself out?
Yeah.
So, like, if you told her to release it, then why are you going all crazy trying to find her? Like, you didn't think that there would, like, something would happen as a result? I mean, we saw where others were, like, releasing the chaos and they turned into ash.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why did you think that, you know, Yennefer was going to be different?
Yeah.
And also, yeah, it was very, I wasn't expecting her to be so emotional about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it really kind of surprised me. I was like, oh, because the Tissaia is not emotional about anything particularly, is she?
I already saw that change at the end of season 1. I was, you know, because we already see that where, you know, she's really positive towards Yennefer, and all along, like when she was a student, she was extremely harsh and cruel in many ways, you know, calling her a piglet. You know, even when she was telling her, okay, you shouldn't have try to take in your life, it was in a very negative way. And, you know, the way she treated her with her friends. So I was surprised when she kept making overtures, like to reach out to her, but she kind of like seemed like a person who didn't know how to show affection. So like when she goes to her, when she is in the city and, you know, selling her magic wares back in season 1, it seems like she's trying to tell her, you know, she tells her come back, and it seems like she's trying to make a friendly overture, but she just doesn't know how to express herself. So it just comes out all wrong. And I can see some people doing that, but yeah, then towards the end of the season, you know, she is very encouraging and supportive of her and tells her, you know, you can do it. Yes, I believe in you. You're doing great. And yeah, Yennefer also seems to rely on her a lot. So I definitely was thrown off by that development in their relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
you brought that up because it was very confusing. I wasn't the only one that was confused by that.
I took all the encouragement and stuff. I took that as Tissaia being like manipulative. You know, she's doing this with something in mind. I still got that impression that they were just tolerating each other for another purpose. You know, to get what I want, I have to use this person. So
yeah. I actually did I did see the relationship as being, okay, I don't know if it's like, if this is the proper analogy, but like, you know, there's a trope in romance, like lovers to you know, enemies to lovers. So I felt like they reminded me of each other because they're both very stern and they can seem very uncaring at first, but they do have a heart really, really, really deep down inside. So I feel like sometimes people like that don't like each other because they're so similar to each other. And I think that throughout their lives, they basically realized that they needed each other. And I think Tissaia seems kind of lonely, which is some interesting stuff happening later on, which I'm curious about. But she does seem to be a person who doesn't really build up relationships. And I think that as her life developed, because obviously The Witcher season 1 takes place over many decades, that she realized that she wanted to be closer to people who are more like her, and that she felt a connection to Yennefer, because I think maybe she finally thought out and realized, you know, Yennefer is hurting and she wanted to try to help her. And I think she connected to the fact that she's so powerful. I think she did feel like she, as her teacher, she should try to guide her, and that her talents, yeah, like you said, maybe Sadie, maybe a little more mercenary, that she felt her talents were needed and that she, you know, she could be helpful to them, but not in such a manipulative bad way, but like, I guess it's just part of a larger picture. But I really like the fact that we're growing closer. I really like this new element to her.
I like her. She's really reminds me of, what's her name? Umbridge from Harry Potter.
Yes, she does. But not as awful.
Just put her in a pink suit and you're there.
But definitely
Umbridge
not awful.
Tissaia doesn't even pretend. But yeah. All right. So anyway, so now basically all the Brotherhood is back at Aretusa, and which is the magical school. And they had captured Cahir, right? Who is the Black Knight, who is the one who captured Ciri originally, the one who's pursuing Ciri all along from Nilfgaard. And so he's been captured. And Tissaia, 𝘴𝘵𝘂𝘁𝗵, and Artorias decide, they talk about him, and Tissaia basically says, I'm going to question him. And, no one else has been able to get information out of him. She's like, let me get my hands on him. And Artorias, who this my husband noted, he's very into the letter of the law. Because at some point when they mentioned that Fringilla uses like dark magic, he's like, okay, then she's not my niece anymore. She's not part of us. And he also doesn't like the fact that Tissaia wants to break the Brotherhood law and question him using like illegal methods of trying to break his mind. So he knew that my husband is very into that, so of course he noticed it, people who follow the letter of the law. So it's kind of interesting. I wonder if we'll see more of that as time goes on with Artorias and that commitment.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, so Tissaia now goes to Cahir, and Cahir is not looking so hot. He's all straggly with his beard, and So he also, so she gives him this whole speech how like, you hurt someone that I really love, and I am going to break you. I'm going to get into your mind, and I'm going to drag it out, and you will there'll be nothing left of you at the end. It is, and yes.
I
was not
that bit. I loved it.
Yeah.
I was not expecting it.
I was
like, that's some
perfect.
villain shit right there.
And his scream and his acting was impeccable. Oh my gosh.
It was really.
And the whole,
I mean, the actors that they cast, I mean, they're all so perfect.
Yeah.
They're all so perfect. I was wondering how they were gonna transition Ciri's character from how she was in season 1, because she was so meek and came across like clever but also a little helpless at the same time. Like her
super naive
obviously is what helped her survive, but she also kind of had this. You could tell that she needed others to help her survive. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, because I knew for the most part that she was going to end up, her character development was going to go in a completely different direction. But I was very curious as to how they were going to do that. But at the end, I feel like what they did? They cast that really, really well. Mm-hmm. Because at first I was like, did they take this little girl and how are they going to make her into what she's supposed to be? It's like Arya from Game of Thrones, where she's going to do shit later, but how are you going to make this cute little thing do that stuff? She's so badass. How do you, that's some foresight that they have to have in the actors.
Mm. Yep. Yeah, that definitely happens a lot. Well, in episode 3, we'll talk about Ciri and her development. So, So now the second part, other people that we follow in this episode, Yennefer and Fringilla. We find out Yennefer, I love this, it's hilarious. She wakes up, you see her vision is groggy, she can barely focus. And who comes into her vision but Fringilla? And Yennefer's like, fuck.
The way she woke up was just that was the first, I loved how she woke up.
That was brilliant.
Yeah.
It also reminded me, Geralt also says fuck a lot, so pardon my language. But so it reminded me of that. I thought it was a little callback to their connection. So she wakes up and turns out she is captured by a very, very small band of Nilfgaardians. There's only a couple of survivors left, at least in that area with Fringilla. And the banter between Fringilla and Yennefer is hilarious because Yennefer does not lose her tongue. She does not get intimidated. She does not get frightened. She is just as sarcastic and nasty as ever. And she realizes that Fringilla wants to offer her up as a sacrifice for failing at the Battle of 𝘬𝘵. And she is just provoking her and prodding her. She's like, you're just a tool. You just follow orders. This is what they taught us at Aretusa. They also taught us to follow orders, and you've never become your own person. And Fringilla tells her, you did, you just left your post, which, you know, this is the whole thing. Like Yennefer is a very contrarian person. She doesn't like to be told what to do. She doesn't like to follow orders. She doesn't like to stick to convention. And yeah, Fringilla is, I think a big theme for Fringilla is switching from the person who follows to the person who leads. And it comes out over the and I'm sure it'll be over the next, you know, the next couple of seasons. But Yennefer right away picks up on the fact that Fringilla is a follower and that she makes fun of her for just following the white flame. Fringilla is a fanatic. She's like, the white flame will cleanse us all, which is like, I can't stand the religious fanaticism. And yes, I did grow up a religious fanatic, so this is probably why it's particularly touching to my heart. I hate that stuff.
Yeah.
I hate this like following someone else blindly, believing that someone else will save you and then you don't have to do anything yourself. And obviously like the whole Nilfgaardian thing, later on she says this, it's actually, she says this in a later episode, but she's like, I come to liberate. Like, you're liberating? Like, how are you liberating people? You're just killing them. But okay, whatever. Like, let me decimate Sintra. That's why I'm liberating them. Okay, no one's alive. Like, follow the white flame if they're dead. Anyway, I can't stand that stuff. But it's very interesting. Like, what do you think of the religious fanaticism of Nilfgaard?
I think I would call it more of a cult than religious fanaticism. It seems like they kind of splintered themselves off a bit, haven't they? And yeah, there is this definite kind of blind following, huge. They have these people are investing everything in it, aren't they?
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. There's definitely this doctrine that they all live by, and they don't deviate from it. And that's where it's like the extremism is just pointing out the dangers of extremism. Like it's like when you follow so blindly, you can't see the damage that you're doing because you think you're a liberator.
Yeah, it reminded me of I really like true crime stuff. I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, and it had very kind of Heaven's Gate vibes, I think. Do you know Heaven's Gate? Do you know that one?
Probably a cult, right?
That's the Kool-Aid cult.
Oh.
You heard of that? But yeah, it had those kind of, these people just, it's like they just turned their own brains off. I don't know how else to describe it. And it's like someone has flicked the switch and then, okay, that's what we're doing now. And nobody seems, if someone put me in that situation, I would be terrified. I'd be like, oh my God, this is, really frightening. But nobody seems worried about it, do they?
So I will say the flip side of this kind of cult is the peace that it gives them. Because if you remember also last season, Geralt, when he is looking for Ciri as Sintra is burning, there's a soldier and he's like, I'm already saved. So, and Cahir, when he's being tortured, he also says like the white flame will cleanse us all. Does he say that? No, what does he say? He says, yeah, he does. He says the white flame will cleanse us all. And so it's something that when you have that kind of belief in somebody or in a system, it can give you a lot of peace because you're like, this is what's going to happen. It's all going to be okay. It's all for a purpose. It can give you meaning. It can give you a direction in life. And some people don't like to make decisions. Some people like to have it spelled out for them. So Yennefer is definitely not. And that's something she rags on Fringilla about. She's like, you're just a follower. You don't think for yourself. You've never been one to think for yourself. Like you're not any better than you were for the Brotherhood. You follow the Brotherhood blindly. Now you're following the white flame blindly. So
yeah.
Yeah, and she does offer, she tells her, come back to the Brotherhood, like, maybe they'll take you in. She's like, nah, I got the better stuff.
No, they would never take her back.
Right.
It would be really hard. It'd be really hard. Yeah. But I'm actually surprised that Fringilla, fell so deep into that Kool-Aid, though, because she wasn't originally supposed to go to Niflgaard. Because it was supposed to be Yennefer, and Yennefer was like, fuck that. So I'm surprised she fell so deep into it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wasn't expecting that last season.
In the episode, we're going to get a bit of a glimpse into why she is so grateful to Ymir. So we'll talk about that when we get to the next episode, but definitely I think that we're going to get into it even more as the seasons go on too. So we'll leave that for the next episode. But basically, we leave off with Yennefer and Fringilla. They have their fun banter. It's hilarious. It's great. It's so funny. They get attacked by what Fringilla thinks are archers. They get shot through with an arrow. They get pulled back the rope. All the soldiers are gone, and Fringilla and Yennefer are just like together, like looking around them in panic, like who is getting them. And that's how we end off in this episode with them.
Yes.
Yennefer's like, let me out. I'm the more powerful sorcerer, but she doesn't let her out, which is actually important to the plot because Yennefer so far has always been shackled with 𝘠𝘪𝘵𝘀, so she hasn't had the chance to use her magic yet, which is important.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So now let's go to Geralt and Ciri. And this is actually how the episode starts off. We start off by seeing some people who are trying to get lodgings at an inn in a village, and it seems abandoned. There's no one there. It's snowing. And boom, the people are attacked. There's this like flying creature. It's very spooky, and the bodies are flying, and that's how we start off.
Mm-hmm. So, it starts off with the episode's resident monster.
I love a monster of the week. I really love the monsters, the design of them as well, all throughout the Witcher. All the way back at the very first thing that you see in the beginning of the first season is that huge
like
creepy,
spidery
thing.
Water.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing that and just being like, yes, I like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is actually
fantastic.
As from what I understand, it's based on it's one of the short stories from the first book. So like last season, like the structure was more self-contained. So every episode had like its own story, its own monster. And this episode, the first episode, is also like that. There's one monster with his one, story that's neatly wrapped up, which would make sense that it's adapted from the short stories. So I really like that one. Best. Anyway, so we now have Geralt, Geralt and Ciri are looking for Yennefer. He finds out she's probably dead. He thinks she's dead. And then Yennefer and Ciri are going through the forest. They're on their way to 𝘬𝘵𝘪𝘵. He tells her, it's like this, wonderful place. It's very secret. And anyway, they're going through the forest. They have their first fireside chat. Ciri is having a nightmare. She wakes up, Geralt says, like, I don't even sleep because I don't want to have nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
You are traumatized people, basically.
I mean, PTSD is really real with them, understandably so. I mean, the amount of shit. Like, so what I don't remember is, like, what's the timeline for Ciri from when she left the castle to where she is now? Like, I don't know what that time frame is.
Yeah, I think it's like a few weeks.
The run?
It can't be too long, can it?
It can't. No, it's not too long, but it's like, okay, season 1 really confused Scott and I when we first watched it because we were like, holy shit, we're in a different decade. Wait, we're in the past? Yes.
By the way, the second time I watched it, I realized they threw in a lot of references to the time, but unless you knew there were different timelines, you wouldn't have picked up on it. Like, they throw in the girl, Malika. She tells Geralt in the first episode, oh, Queen Calante just won her first battle. And Ciri, when they're at the ball, later tells her grandmother, oh, you won your first battle when you were my age. So that kind of helps you give that. And then there's also Yennefer, when they meet, she meets the bard again later. She tells him, oh, you have new crow's feet in your eyes, so it's later. And then the bard, with the episode with the djinn, the bard tells Geralt, oh, I haven't seen you in months, years, a decade. So they do throw in references to the time. It's just hard to pick up on the first time around.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know the time frame between when she had to flee the castle to when she ran into Geralt for the first time, and like where they are exactly. Like, I don't know how much time has passed. Weeks, months, years, I don't know. Obviously no one ages, so it's really hard to tell. Like, no one ages. Like, no one actually knows how old Ciri is. Like, they say she's a child, but like,
She must be, she's a teenager, because I was listening to an interview with the showrunner. She says that she was supposed to be 12 in the books, but they decided to age her up because they realized that they wouldn't be able to work with a child actor, like basically because they're very limited in the number of hours they can work. So they decided to make her older. So she must be like, I don't know, 17, 18, 16.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. But in my, it's like, is it like Baby Yoda though? Where it's like,
oh, like with the age, because he's 50, isn't he, Baby Yoda?
yeah, Baby Yoda is 50 because they age so slowly.
Yeah.
I'm like, is this how they are though? Because like, obviously there are people that do age into much older, you know, senior looking, but you also know that they live for decades looking exactly the same. So I'm really curious. I'm like, is Ciri like a 50-year-old teenager? I don't know.
So Ciri's the only people who age slower are the Witchers and mages. But I know ages normally. And again, okay, I shouldn't speak because I don't know the Witcher universe that well, but I think humans for sure seem to age normal. But you know, Ciri's a human.
I think the elves as well, they age differently. They age slower.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
definitely the witches.
Yeah, so Geralt and Ciri, you know, we see them, this is like the beginning of their relationship, traveling together through the forest, and they find the village, they see that it's empty, they're a little creeped out by it, and they end up going to, Geralt says, I know someone nearby, and he goes to this house. You know, he does not get a very friendly greeting. The owner bewitches the house to be like very frightening, like, you know, the windows are shuddering and there's wind and whatever. And finally, this creature comes out and like jumps onto Geralt, and Geralt's about to kill him when he talks, and he's like, Geralt, and he's like, Nivellen, what happened to you? So he's like, well, that's a long story.
Mm-hmm.
I really love when they arrive in the village, and he's, you know, he's like, oh, it's too quiet, and then tells Ciri to shut up because he's like, no, not even the dogs aren't barking. So there's something, you know, something is bad. It's bad quiet, not normal quiet. I loved that little interaction. It was very kind of Geralt is, witches are supposed to have no emotions. They're supposed to be devoid of all that, but he's obviously in his own kind of very gruff way taking on that fatherly role, isn't he? I really liked that. That little bit I thought was really well written.
Yeah,
that's a major theme, and you know, actually it's one of the things that he talks with Nivellen about that role. But anyway, so they go into the house. You know, he's like, oh, I bet you want to take a bath. Ciri's like so excited. Geralt refuses because apparently he loves being stinky. And
I don't even understand his aversion to taking baths. Like, you don't want to not stink.
Like, take a bath.
You lose yourself.
But yeah, like just clean yourself. You're like all smudged. Ugh. Anyway.
It's like, what? I mean, okay, even if you're putting on the same nasty ass clothes, at least your body feels a little bit better.
That's what Ciri says, isn't it? Her clothes were about to run away. I thought that was hilarious as well.
Yeah.
We're really 21st century. I always say, like, I would love to see the past, but I'm afraid I would be very repulsed by the hygiene lack. So yeah, we're very pampered. What can I say?
I mean, as a bit of a caveat, I mean, I've got horses, and on the days that I spend all day with them, I come home and Nick's like, oh my God, can you not? And I'm like, no, I smell, you know, you just don't notice this.
Yeah.
Well, he apparently also smells like old horse, so.
I love that. That's one of the lines that really stayed with me from the first season, is that I can smell the color of your horse. Just
I know, right? And Yennefer's like, you are going to bathe.
I have definitely come home like that before.
Yeah.
But I do bathe. I'm not a Geralt.
So Ciri is very excited. She takes a bath, and I have to say I was a little worried they would sexualize her during this scene. I was like, please don't, please don't. And it seemed it was okay. It was not sexual. So like, thank God.
Yeah, I don't think they did. So
Yeah.
I love the magic.
I felt that too. Felt that too. I was really hoping that they wouldn't as well, because I was just like, she's still a child. I don't know her age, but in my mind, she's a child. Please don't do anything weird. She's still a child.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they did. So great. She really did just take a bath.
Yeah.
Yeah. So while she's in
but then I got creeped out by the thing that was watching her though.
Yeah, she hears this like scuttling thing in the ceiling, and she sees this beautiful white dress. And she's so excited. And when she comes out with it, Nivellen's like, oh. And she's like, thank you. And he's like, yes, yes, sure. Because he didn't put it out. And he's like, oh. Or he knows where it is. But he doesn't say anything. So yeah, she asks about
at that point.
He's like, yeah, I have a cat. Her name is Verena. You know, she's scared of people. So
what did you think? Where did you think it came from?
What?
Sorry, go on.
Oh, I mean, it's like, and I love how they pointed out how he's supposed to be by himself. They're like, how do you? You're supposed to live alone forever.
Yeah.
Well, the cat doesn't count. Like that's probably still within the curse. So yeah, speaking of the curse, he tells him, you know, they're like, okay, how did you become to look like this? And he tells them that he fell in with a bad lot when he was younger, and he destroyed a temple, and the priestess cursed him. And she said, you know, you're gonna look like this and live alone forever. And, you know, Geralt's like, you know, he says he was high on mushrooms, and Geralt's like, even though you're high, that shouldn't make you do that, which I found interesting because Geralt, you know, has a pretty strong moral code. And, you know, that's one of the things I really like about him. A lot of the characters in The Witcher are kind of, and, you know, they do good things and bad things, but Geralt is someone who always tries to do the right thing. And I really about him. I don't think I could watch it if there was not a character like that, because that's the most important thing to me, is doing the right thing. So I'm grateful that there's at least a good couple of characters who tried to do that.
Yeah.
Yep. So
what accent do you think Nivellen has?
Pardon?
What do you think Nivellen's accent is?
I don't know, guys. You know something like that? Because I didn't actually look up the actor either. What's his accent?
I was just curious, because Veronica, do you? I assume, I shouldn't assume, but you read Let's Play.
Oh.
Actually, I don't.
You don't?
I don't read Let's Play.
You should. So he's Welsh.
Yeah.
And it's not, I wouldn't say it's a mega accurate Welsh accent, but it's pretty strong Welsh, you know, very rural Welsh.
Mm-hmm.
I just wondered.
The actor who plays Nivellen.
I don't know if the actor is Welsh or not. But and long story short, I know people that are Welsh, and they sound incredibly similar. It's like I just wondered if I was quite interested to see if you'd be able to discern that. I was listening to something else. I couldn't tell you what it was, but they were saying about Charles in Let's Play, and they were doing a Scottish accent. And I said, oh, he sounds like this Scottish accent. And I was going, what? No. So now you know what a Welsh accent sounds like. So now you know what a Charles sounds like.
Gotcha.
I've never picked up on that. So thank you. I did look up the Welsh accent in Let's Play. To me, it sounds like a British accent, but I guess you're right. Like if it's different varieties of Welsh accents, I would not know. So
all you have to do is drive 20 miles down the road here, and everybody's got a different accent.
Mm-hmm. I can see that. Yeah.
So Geralt asks Nivellen, he's like, okay, you know, you got cursed, great. He's like, why are there no villagers in the village nearby? And Nivellen's like, well, they left because of the war in 𝘬𝘵𝘂𝘁. And he's like, all of them? He's like, yeah, well, there's like a lot of weird monsters coming out, new monsters, and it's like the end of days. And Geralt's like, I lived through 3 ends of days. He's very skeptical, which he always is skeptical. He's been skeptical of what's the thing, destiny, which is like a big theme. He's skeptical of the child surprise. Like he's always like, he does his own thing. The world is a very suspicious world. It took me a while to accept that, but the world and the people in the world really operate with this magical system, right? I mean, like, this is their world. Like, they really believe in prophecies and omens and things like that. It's a little hard to get into it sometimes, I'll admit, as a person who lives in the West, and like, I did grow up in a much more mystical society, and I like rejected that. So it's a little hard for me sometimes to get that in fantasy, to like remember, okay, this is their world, this is what they believe in, this is their reality. It's not a believe in, like, this is their system. So anyway, so Nivellen kind of like avoids, he gives his explanations, but he also says, oh, I've seen the wild hunt. Like, I've heard that there's the wild hunt. And Ciri is like, oh, my grandfather said he saw the wild hunt. And Geralt's like, her grandfather was a drunk, which I didn't quite understand why he said that, because I didn't really get the impression that Ace was a drunk back in season 1. But I realized that Geralt doesn't really want her to talk about her past sometimes. Like, he doesn't want her to reveal who she is in every place. He doesn't really trust Nivellen at this point. And he says later on,
he's just been very vague the whole time so far. Very, very vague. Like, he's sus, because he walks around questions. He circles around them and just gives like non-answers. So of course, when you're someone that's just, always on the lookout and always suspicious anyways, then you're like, I don't care if you're supposed to be my friend, you're real sus.
But I got the impression that, they were quite good friends when they were young. And that means that's why Geralt doesn't trust him. He's like, all right, we're friends, but I know you. And I know that you talk out your backside half the time. I know what you're like, so I'll just take everything with a pinch of salt. I know a couple of people like that, and I love them to death, but you just kind of accept that that's the way that they are.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. Yeah. Remember when he leaves her to take a bath, Geralt asks Nivellen, he's like, is she safe here? And he kind of pauses, and he's like, basically gives him a look like, can I trust you? And he's like, don't worry, I'm still me. Did you think he was referring to, like, are you going to sexually harass her? What did you think? Because that's kind of a little bit.
I don't think he was referring to that.
No, I didn't get that impression. No.
I didn't get that. I think he was more like, I know you're keeping secrets from me.
Yeah.
I can tell you're keeping secrets from me, but can I trust that these secrets aren't going to harm Ciri?
Yeah.
Can I trust you enough that they're not going to harm? Like, keep secrets. Everyone has secrets, but are they going to harm her?
Yeah.
And so that's when he got serious. He was like, no.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
So, anyway, Nivellen shows Ciri. He has this beautiful little like magic, not magic, like a music box, and it has it illustrates a story called The Fall of the Elders, and it's about an elven warrior who fell in love with a human mage, and even though they were not allowed to be together, and they had a baby, and then they died, of course. So, yeah, we can kind of guess, even without knowing anything else in the story, we can kind of guess that it's going to be relevant to Ciri, otherwise why we show it to her. And and they have a kind of conversation, and he says something very interesting about himself. She tries to comfort him because Ciri's a nice person, like she's a good-hearted girl, and she's like, oh, don't worry, like I'm sure you're okay. And he basically tells her, like, some things, I've done terrible things, and some things are unforgivable, which comes out a little later in the story. But I thought it was very nice to see that he really doesn't forgive himself. He knows he did something terrible, and he lives with that knowledge every day. And he actually tells Geralt earlier, he says he tried to end his life several times and he couldn't. The priestess's curse means that he comes back to life.
Yeah. Yeah, so he has to live with his misery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta get on with it.
I mean, considering he held all of his servants, yeah, you're not the best of guys.
Why do you think he did kill all of his servants?
I think he did it out of rage, just because he was turned into this being.
I couldn't the way that he kind of talked about it. I couldn't decide if he'd done it, by accident, because he was still figuring out how to monster, or if he'd done it for their benefit, or their benefit, or what. I couldn't decide.
Yeah, but I do like how they talk about monsters and what makes a monster.
Yes,
because
conversation.
Yeah, like if you do something bad, but you're also doing it to save others, would you still be considered a monster? Like Geralt is he's a monster that kills monsters, because by society standard, if you don't have emotions, you're a monster. And if you go out and hunt and kill things, you're a monster. But I'm like, but he's like saving all y'all's lives.
I
Why are you so
witches as a tool, though, don't they? The witches are something that have been they have been created, they have been made, and they're seen as less than human.
I agree. I don't get why. I'm like, they're saving all of you, so I don't get it. I think some of them are pretty merciful.
Use their services, like you like seek them out, and you're like, come help us, come save us. Oh, but we hate you.
But now go.
now go, because what, you're gonna kill us? No, like that's what, he doesn't even. I just don't get it. I don't get it. Yeah, but I do like that how they bring that up, like what makes a monster. And I mean, Geralt sees himself as one. And then they start talking a little bit about Ciri, because they don't really know anything about her. Geralt still doesn't know anything about her. She hasn't revealed much about herself or the journey that she just went on and things along those lines. And this Neville guy is like super fucking vague.
Yeah.
And so, like I like that they always have an overall theme to each episode, like a philosophical theme that makes you think about what's hanging out in society and things along those lines. It's it makes you think a lot.
Yeah.
Especially the conversation that Ciri's going to have in a second. But to answer, Sadie, what you said, I kind of assumed that the servants didn't recognize Nivellen when he came back looking like a boar, and they tried to fight him, and then he was trying to
I mean, that would make sense.
That totally makes sense.
That totally makes sense. Like they tried to attack him, so he killed them. And I don't know, maybe he just simply wasn't in the right state of mind when he was turned.
That's a common theme, right? When you become an animal, you become more animalistic, right? You don't have so much control over yourself. So anyway, so you were talking about how Geralt has this conversation with Nivellen that Ciri doesn't want to open up to him. She doesn't really trust him yet, and they have it while they're playing a truth-telling game. Whoever gets the knife, whoever misses Nivellen's father's head, has to tell the truth. And Nivellen, of course, magics his knives so that Geralt misses all the time. But Geralt knows it, but he's, he lets it slide for a bit. He's very Geralt. He'll keep his cards close to his heart, even if he won't let on that he knows. And we see also Nivellen has said this before, that his father, he didn't have a good relationship with his father. His father was not proud of him. He obviously is throwing his knives at his father, so clearly there was not such a great relationship there. So now there's this really, speaking of monsters, it's this amazing conversation, and to me this is the crux of the episode. Ciri wakes up and there's this very, very freaky creature who we know is a 𝘚𝘪𝘵𝘩. Oh my gosh, it was so freaky. It was so good. Like that, scuttling around.
I was just like, what is, like, because this person is not human. Obviously they are a monster, but they look so human. And I'm just with the big giant eyes. I'm like, what is it supposed to be though? I'm like, what is it inside? I was like, is it I was just thinking some kind of a bug, because of how it was crawling, or and the way it was twitching and all of that stuff and speaking. I was like, maybe this is like one of them giant spider things that's, you know, moonlighting as a pretty woman. Like, what is this?
I got big old bat vibes. Yes. I thought she was very kind of, you know, all the little twitchy movements and the really big eyes made me think of, cute little bat.
Hanging upside down. Also.
Yeah.
So this whole thing is very, very interesting because you said Veronica, she's pretty. She is very, very pretty. And she's dressed in a nightgown, right? So that's very disarming. Nightgown, very sweet girl, right? She looks like a little cute, pretty girl. Obviously very freaky, pretty girl, but yes. And you know she's a monster, right? And then they have this whole conversation about what makes a monster. So Verena asks her, like the dress I gave you. So right away you see she's a giving person, right? She wanted to with a nice outfit. So, and she's obviously not there to hurt her. And she's like, you know, Ciri's shocked. She's trying to figure out what she is. And she, you know, Verena tells her something interesting. She's like, oh, I've never met anyone else like me, alone in the heart, which is an indication about what Ciri is feeling right now. She's feeling very alone. Yeah. Being isolated from people. She doesn't feel like she's like everyone else. And Verena also feels that way, which, you know, a bit of, remember in last season when Geralt didn't want to kill the goat creature because he's like, oh, you talk, you know, you have consciousness. And he's okay with killing monsters because presumably they're not self-aware. They're not conscious. And
they live on instincts and impulses and not have like, they're not conscious beings that understand what it is that they're doing. Yeah.
So Verena seems to have a mix because there definitely is an element to her, and we'll see later, right, where we find out she killed all the villagers. And so there's an element where she can't stop herself. And she does like, you know, ruthlessly kill things because that's her nature. But then she also clearly has a bit of a human side, which is a thinking side, right? A side that can make choices. So it's a very tough one. And she tells her, she's like, you know, Ciri's like, are you a monster? And Verena says, are you a monster? Because you're different. And Ciri's like, monsters do bad things to people. And she says, humans do bad things to everyone. Ooh.
I was like, damn, that shit was so real. That was the realest statement ever. I was like, yup. you can't argue that one because they do. And they do it full consciously, which makes it worse.
That's the difference, right? An animal, like, and a monster, presumably that's the same, they can't choose. They don't think. They don't have the level of awareness. But yeah, humans bad things on purpose. Like,
yeah. They choose to. Humans have choices. Women have choices too. Humans have choices. And they choose to be bad. Like, whether you realize that's what you're choosing or not, they choose to do bad things. So it's like, who is the bigger monster? The one that's consciously a monster or unconsciously a monster? You know, which is it? Which is worse? Which is better? You don't know. Yeah. That was the realest statement I had ever heard. I was like, yeah, that's so true.
I quite like the idea that they have this kind of idea of monsters being separate from animals. How do you separate those? What makes it a monster rather than just an animal? Because animals run on instincts. We call it the ABCs, the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. That's how animals make choices. And we do to an extent. But what would, you know, if a lion comes through a village, it's probably not going to attack anyone unless it wants something. So it's hungry or it's scared, or, you know, there's another act of aggression that makes it aggressive back because it's defending itself. So is a monster different in that it actively goes to seek out destruction? You know, it has a different drive, maybe.
That's what I thought of too, because if you notice, every time a monster comes up, it's always trying to destroy you. I thought about like, oh, if I were a monster, I would just like go about my day. And if I was hungry, I would, you know, eat something, right? But like, apparently these monsters seem to be just very destructive forces. And like, anytime they see a person, they're like, I want to kill you. Which, and they also seem to be much larger and more capable of, destruction than regular animals.
Yeah, I feel like with them, monsters are more magical beings.
Yeah.
To natural beings the way animals are.
Yeah. But we know that
that's how I think that they think of monsters, as more of this, like, of magical beings of some sort. Like there's something within them that has some source of magic, whether they know it or not. That's what it is, and so that's what makes them a monster.
Yeah,
it's not just they run on more animalistic instincts, but also animal instincts influenced and enhanced by magic.
Yeah. It's just, there seems to be quite a spectrum, doesn't there? Like Mindy, you were saying, that some of them are just, animals, and they just go around destroying the place, but some of them are much more human, like Verena.
Yeah, I haven't seen any other monster that's like Verena, though. I think she was only
not as human. No. There was the weird goat guy, like you said. He was kind of sentient enough, wasn't he?
He don't call him a monster, right? He's just another species of something. What's it called?
Or someone that's cursed, because when you're cursed, you can also turn into a half being of some type of animal.
Yeah.
These people are
someone that's cursed a monster.
Yeah, they're very judgy of superficial appearances, because it's like Nivellen and the hedgehog, right? Ostensibly, the only thing that changed about them was the outside, right? So, like, yes, I mean, presumably, like, you should still be able to be friends with someone like that because it's just their outside. But it also kind of shows that the world they live in is very superficial, and like they lump you into the monster category, and they're like, that's it, you're done. We're not talking with you. We're not friends with you. We're not socializing with you.
Mm-hmm.
That goes
they
back
do the same exact thing to the elves.
Yeah.
How dare you have pointy ears?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that kind of your survival instincts again. They've had to learn to be judgmental about these things, because the guy that looks like a hedgehog, he wasn't dangerous at all, was he? Or not that we saw. But if you are, some guy wandering around a market and then that appears next to you, you've got a second or two to decide what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to fight it? Are you going to run? All of these different. I don't know if you've ever heard of the 5 Fs. People say that if flight or fight, but there's 5 responses. So you have fight or flight, and you also have freeze. You have fiddle, and you have. We'll call the other one mating.
Yeah.
So those are your basic choices as like an instant response to a situation. And that's true for mammals. All mammals do that. So I think that, that people are going to be very judgmental, because it's a dangerous world. It's much more dangerous there than it is for us here. And it's a survival thing. So yeah, I can see why they would be so judgmental and kind of, you can go over there, because to them it's an unknown quantity. It's just completely unpredictable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, but you can tell that the humans within this world have very much, like, there's humans and then there's others.
Yeah. And they're still dicks.
If you don't fall into human, that means you fall into other. And if you fall into other, we want nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
You are not one of us.
Okay.
So obviously you're bad and you must die.
Goes the other way, which we'll get into the next episode. Like, everyone is very, very divided. But also about the monsters, remember, the monsters only came into this world in the conjunction of the spheres. Now, I feel like anyone who's a real Witcher fan would be like, just tell me, I don't know, because I don't really know the lore. I only know what's presented in the movie, in the TV series. But apparently, and we see this in the next episode too, right? And then there's kind of like a theory throughout the book, is that not the book, the series, the worlds collided, and then monsters were brought into this world in the convention of the spheres, and they're really from a different sphere. So they don't belong on this world. So I think that's what separates them from regular races. So,
okay.
Yeah. So Ciri realizes, she tells her, like, Ciri is clever, by the way, because I wouldn't have realized this right away. She's like, oh, Nivellen hid you from the Witcher. He loves you. It's just like, oh, okay. So I thought it was pretty sharp of her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so Geralt now is investigating because Geralt doesn't trust Nivellen. He thinks something odd is going on. He goes back to the village. He actually sees some footsteps outside, and that they stop suddenly. He goes back to the village. He sees the bodies of the travelers that we saw in the beginning of the episode, and then he notices again the footsteps, and then they disappear. And he's like, oh, it flies. And then he runs back and he tells Ciri, wakes her up, and he's like, go to Roach, and if you see anything leaving this house except for me, run. And that's, in terms of parenting, that's what he knows how to do right now. I found it very fascinating because Geralt undergoes a transformation throughout the story in terms of how he relates to Ciri. But his first instinct is like, he just wants to protect her. That's the kind of person he is. He's just protect her. And he doesn't know how to really give her the tools to protect herself yet. So he just tells her, run. You just leave. I'll take care of it. If you see anything aside from me, leave, you run. Ciri, of course, not the kind of person to listen. Yeah. So,
but I mean, when Verina's like, "Don't run, I can't help myself if you run," then it was like when they were outside. That's when you really put together like what she was.
Yeah.
But you don't see it yet. But you put together what she. The whatever it is that she was.
Yeah. Right. But before that happens, Geralt looks around the house and he opens the door and he sees Verina feeding on Nivellen. And at first it starts out, you're like, are they having sex? Because it's like she's on him and it's in a very sexy manner, which kind of does show you it's like intermingled, like she loves him, but she's also feeding on him, right? And then we know, presumably on an average person, they would die if she did that, but he just regenerates. So it doesn't really matter if she feeds on him. And then he, she realizes he's there. She tries to attack him with her scream. And then we see like the teeth, like, and then she's a Brooksa, right? Very spooky. Mm-hmm. And, they have this little fight and they end up crashing outside. And she tells that line, don't run, I can't help it if you run, which also shows like that's her choice. That's her saying like, I can't help myself if you do that, please don't do it. Like she's telling her, I don't want to.
Like my things are going to kick in and I don't want them to kick in with you.
Yeah.
Because
great drive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, Ciri gets that and she's like, she has empathy for this being that she knows Geralt is going to kill, because in Geralt's mind, she's a monster, and that's what he killed. And so, I was.
So they have this battle. She turns into the bat, and then when Geralt does this thing, like he sticks the sword up behind her while she's flying over him, and then she gets wounded. She turns back into a human, naked, of course, because let's have naked ladies for the drama, but it's kind of like, she's returning to her.
Yeah, you would think that it would just stay more of its back form, but the way that it turned back into a human when it was stabbed and it dies as a human, I thought was interesting.
Maybe she was cursed like Nivellen.
I don't think so, because he names it as a Brooksa, so it's a type of monster. But I think you're right.
Yeah.
It's meant to show us that she is a very human-like, and to make us question what is she, and also the fact that they make her naked. Actually, I don't think it's supposed to be sexy. I think it's supposed to show us that her vulnerability, and it's like she's being, remember how the princess was naked when she was reborn from the _𝘧𝗏𝗏. So it's kind of like this is her true form, like a very vulnerable human. So it's like, I think it's also to make us pity her in that state. So anyway, she grabs Ciri, she threatens to, rip her teeth out, whatever, rip her throat out. And at that point, Nivellen, who, comes up behind her and like sticks some object through her. And what happens next is very freaky. She like turns her head around and
freaky.
that thing through her. It's so gross. Like, as she comes up closer and she tells him, she's like, mine or no one else's, which is like interesting because nobody was trying to take him away from her as far as I could tell, but okay. And then she's like, I love you. And then okay.
I know. And then it makes you think, like, are monsters capable of having that kind of emotion, like love, and understanding it? You know, like,
yeah.
And then she dies because you can't really survive a head being cut off.
But before she dies, she tells Ciri, he'll kill you too.
Yeah.
Which is a big
because she's a monster.
Right.
Pretty much saying you're a monster too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, Ciri's going to talk about it later because that's something she thinks about. Like, am I a monster? Because, well, we'll talk about it in a second. But yeah, it turns out, poof, 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 while Nivellen is screaming, no, because he loves her. He loves her, by the way, but he was willing to hurt her to save Ciri. So he had morals. He was willing
and then immediately apologized. He kept saying, I'm sorry, but he's obviously got, like you say, he's obviously got some morals, because he's done it to save Ciri. I'm pretty sure if Ciri wasn't in the picture and it was just Geralt, I don't think he'd have just let Geralt deal with it, wouldn't he? But
yeah,
I think so as well, because he knows Geralt would be able to handle himself, so he wouldn't interfere.
Yeah.
Unless he's trying to save her instead.
Yeah.
But he didn't want Ciri, who was obviously very innocent.
Yeah.
Up in that, to get hurt.
Yeah.
So, because I'm sure when he stabbed her, he knew that was going to kill her.
Yeah, that's what I think. He's kind of got hold of her then, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's just a way to snap her out of what was happening. More like, and just kind of stop her, but not kill her.
But not kill her.
That wouldn't kill her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, turns out...
I love you, but I'll stab you. To save you. I don't know.
Anyway, so his curse is broken because of love and blood, which is, he remembers the priestess saying love and blood. So obviously her blood, her love for him, it heals him. And now he's a human. I mean, he doesn't have the appearance of a boar anymore. And he tells them, he's like, I found her in the woods. She was injured. I nursed her back to health. And I let her stay with me. I let her feed off me, but it wasn't enough for her. And I know I kind of turned a blind eye to what she was doing with the villagers because she's the only one who accepted me as I was. And she tolerated me and loved me and lived with me. And that's why he let her do what she did to the villagers. So that's, morally ambiguous already, right? And he tells them that he's like, the priestess cursed me because I raped her. And that is like, mic drop. Geralt and Ciri like turn away from him. They're like, goodbye. They leave. And he tells them, he's like, end it for me, right? Because he wanted to end it already before. He hates what he did and he lives with that all the time. And Geralt says, you're immortal now. Do it yourself. Oh,
love that line. I loved it. Oh, it's just brilliant.
It was. And the way they just turn and walk away. Yeah. Because it's almost like they didn't really look at him in disgust until he told them about what he did to the priest.
Yeah.
Or the priestess.
Yeah.
Because they're like, okay, we can see a little how you would turn a blind eye. You're like this monster creature. And so someone managed to fall in love with this monster creature that you are. Like, you became that monster creature because you raped someone? Dude, that's your own fault. Peace. Bye. I get that. I was like, yeah.
Why do you think
you 100% did this to yourself?
Why do you think he admitted to it? Because up until then, he just said, oh, yeah, no, I killed a priestess.
I think that he needed closure, or I think he wanted to be forgiven, or
I think he wanted. I think he wanted them to just not like to be disgusted with him and kill him. And they're just like, we're so disgusted with you, we're gonna let you live in your own misery instead of kill you. And if you want to die, you gotta do it yourself.
I think using the expression "coming clean" is very apt, because when you come clean, you feel better. You don't want to have that dirt on you, and telling people at least is honest, and at least lets people know the truth, and that's it doesn't obviously wipe it clean, but it makes you feel better. And I think he's just been living with his guilt all along, and he in a way, like when you lie to people and you tell them, oh, like you make them think that you're still a good person, you have that stain on you even worse. And like this, if everyone knows you're a bad person, at least kind of their hatred maybe can wash away can kind of be a punishment, and I think he wants that. It's I have to say, this episode was so well done. It is so complex. Everything from like the monster to him and Nivellen, because he clearly feels like trash about what he did, and he's been feeling that for like whatever, I don't know, 12 years I think it was since that happened. So, but he says like, oh, I fell in with a bad law, and apparently he really this is a little bit in the books I did when I was typing a question about Nivellen and couldn't remember something, and I did see that he apparently was not such a good character, savory character to begin with. So it's this really tough thing about people who do bad things and then regret it later. Like, when can you be forgiven? Can you be forgiven?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other characters in The Witcher who are very ambiguous, who do a lot of bad things. So yeah, it's not the first time we're going to come up with this. One of my favorite characters is did a lot of bad things, which we'll talk about when we get to him. But and also, I'm sure you guys picked up on like the Beauty and the Beast theme. The first short stories are apparently like
Beauty and the Beast
fairy tales. The last thing that happens, which is also very telling, is that when they go away, they have another talk in the forest, Geralt and Ciri, and Ciri is really pondering about what Verena just told her, where like, he'll kill you because you're a monster. And she tells him, like, she really has to get this off her chest. She's like, sometimes I feel like I could burn the whole world down. And that's what makes her feel like a monster. And like, we'll see throughout the episode, the things that she's done, when she was leaving Sintra and like her screaming and what the screaming can do, she feels like that makes her a monster. And like, she's hurt people and she feels very, very torn about that. So she like immediately raises it to Geralt, which I think is actually pretty good of her to like kind of get that out there in the air. Like, Geralt, like, I feel like a monster too. Like, does that mean?
Yeah.
She doesn't ask the question, but she does the first part. That's the end of this episode. So
there's so much has to happen in this episode. It was like one of those episodes where it's like it just kept going, and it felt like it was significantly longer than that 1 hour it was.
It was like a movie, wasn't it? Like self-contained. Yeah.
So many amazing themes here. I love that. All right.
Thank you to my current patrons: Susie, Lady Libris, Lily, Jenny, Haley, Maria, Molly, Veronica, Emily, Joe, Rochelle, Saucy Puddles, Meg, and Rose, Priya, Alexa, Misty, Laura, Joanne, Patty, Jen, Emilda, Esther, Unwatchable People, Doris, Poppy C, Marie, Jen, Emily, Jean, Jen, Erin, D, Kay, Lily, Beckett, and Duranda. Your support is truly appreciated.